Hello, friends. This is Dorie Clark, and I am here with Newsweek. We have our weekly interview show, Better. And our guest this week is the wonderful Michael Bungay Stanier. He is the author of a new book. It's called How to Begin. And today we're going to be talking about how to start projects that matter. This is the new year. We are all highly motivated. We have the will, we have the volition, but so many of us actually don't get it done. And in some cases, we don't even start to get it done. And that is what we're going to talk about with Michael. He is going to help us figure out how to begin. Michael Bungay Stanier, thanks for being here.
Oh, look, I am delighted to be here. And you are role modeling, embracing change in the new year. You're hanging out in your new apartment in Florida and Miami. So maybe I should be interviewing you on what it takes to kind of go for something big and meaningful and important and to kind of follow through and execute, because you seem to be outstanding at that.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, I made it happen. So we're down here doing something totally different, and we want to welcome all of our friends tuning in from around the world. Please type into the chat box and let us know who you are, where you're dialing in from, and also, of course, any questions you have for Michael Bungay Stanier about the concept of how to begin, how to start projects that matter. And of course, he is the author. You may know him from his best-selling book, his previous book, The Coaching Habit, which has sold a million plus copies now. Is that
Yeah,
right,
I know.
Michael?
Isn't that incredible? I mean,
That
it is ridiculous. I mean, you're an author. As authors, we're delighted if we can sell more than 10,000 copies. 100,000 is pretty extraordinary. But to sell more than 1 million, something weirdly magical has happened. You've had some fairy dust or something sprinkled on it. So, yeah, the coaching habit's a bit of a phenom.
we love it, and nobody deserves the fairy dust more than you, Michael.
So thank
But
you.
so let me start with a question. So
Yeah.
we all know, conventional New Year's wisdom, right? That everybody wants to
Right.
you want okay, it's right today, it's January 13th. Everybody's in the gym, they're hitting the gym hard, and then by February
Yeah.
13th, not so much. So tell me why you wrote a book, How to Begin, because for many people they might say, yeah, I'm great at beginning, it's the finishing part. So break it down for
Yeah.
us, Michael.
Well, part of what January is often like for us is kind of setting those bigger goals. Like, okay, this year for sure, I'm going to get going on something that matters to me, whether that's something kind of more personal, like going to the gym, or whether it's kind of a bigger project. I want to write a book. I want to start a company. It's kind of that level. And I realized as I was trying to write a book about something else, which didn't work. I wrote a first draft of a book, which was a disaster.
Wait,
But
what was the one that didn't work? Why didn't it
well,
work?
I was trying to write a book around what does it really take to try and change behavior, which is kind of connected to all of this, which is like how do we do things differently when we want to, but we keep bumping into resistance. And I shared the first draft with some friends, and one of my friends, Misha, wrote back and went, "Look, I'm 50 pages into your new draft. I have no idea what it's about. It's a disaster. It is a disaster." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I picked through the rubble of this book, and what I found was a single line: "We unlock our greatness by working on the hard things." And I was like, that feels important. That's what I want to do. I want to help people unlock their greatness so they can be the best version of themselves by having the courage and the focus to work on the stuff that matters. And so I somehow ended up looking at goals, and I realized I hadn't thought about goal and goal setting for a long time. And honestly, I didn't like what I saw. On one hand, there's SMART goals, and SMART goals is something we've all heard about, and we've probably all tried to write SMART goals in the past. But I realized that SMART goals are about something really kind of specific. You're trying to narrow it down, you're trying to tidy it up, you're trying to make it specific and measurable and actionable and the like. But I'm like, what if you've got the wrong goal? What you're doing then is you're trying to tidy up something that isn't actually the thing you should be working on. And then the other thing that people have heard of is BHAGs from Jim Collins, big, hairy, audacious goals. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, BHAG. But mostly those seem to exist at a kind of big corporate level. Here's the BHAG of our team or our organization. I'm like, how do you find the sweet spot for people? And at the heart of this book is how do you set a worthy goal, something that is thrilling and important and daunting?
I love that. That's fantastic, Michael. So I just want to take a moment to greet some of the great friends who are tuning in from around the world. We have Carlos from Colombia. We've got Adnan from Turkey. Steven's joining us from Michigan. Larry from Ridgefield,
Yeah,
Washington. Robin's here from Florida. Cheryl's in Minnesota,
let's
and
go. Thanks.
she's your home girl.
I see
Denise is
that.
here from Southern California. Lee from Vancouver. Mimi from Mumbai. Jacqueline from London, and many more. We're so glad to have you. Please type your questions for Michael Bungay
And
Stanier.
I'm grateful the cute duck has gone. The cute duck was a bit annoying in the chat, so thanks for blocking that.
I try to do my part. We all love cute ducks and we don't discriminate. But when ducks get a little rowdy, ducks get gone.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, absolutely. So I think what you've talked about, Michael, about a worthy goal is really interesting. So can you just spend a little more time on that? Break that down
Yeah,
for me. If I have been coming up with New Year's resolutions, as we all often
yeah,
do at this time of year, what are the parts again of a worthy goal, and
yeah.
how can I actually evaluate? Like, okay, go to the gym more,
Right,
call
right.
my grandma. How do I know what are the
Yeah.
worthy goals and where I should really be focusing?
Yeah. So the first thing I'd do is I'd probably separate out some of the specific habits that you'd like to build into your life, like call your grandma more, from a kind of worthy goal, which is maybe the next level up in terms of where you decide to put time and effort and resource and reputation and relationships investing in that. So a worthy goal has these three elements: thrilling and important and daunting. So let me explain what these three elements are, and you can see how they weave together to create something that you want to bring your attention to. So thrilling is, does this light me up? Do I care about it? Does it matter to me? Am I excited about it? Do I kind of rub my hands together and go, this is it? This is the thing I would love to spend some time really doing. And the power of starting with thrilling is it makes sure that you're focused on something that you actually care about rather than kind of something that's become an obligation. Oh, I should be doing this. I ought to be doing this. Oh, it's expected of me that I'm doing this. Thrilling says, look, start by just going, what do you want? What do you want to do? And I'll tell you, Dorie, I was talking to my friend Kate the other day about this, and we're going through the three attributes of a worthy goal. Honestly, she's been talking to me for 25 years about writing a book. And she finally admitted, look, I have no thrill whatsoever at the idea of writing a book. And I'm like, well, no kidding, because you haven't written a book for 25 years. But this gave her permission to put aside a goal that just didn't really engage her heart and her mind and her soul. But if your worthy goal is just thrilling, it runs the danger of just being a bit all about you, me, me, me. And we kind of move into the worst of kind of self-development and self-help when it's a bit too self-indulgent. So important, ask the question, how does this serve the bigger picture? How does this make this world a little bit better? How does it give more to the world than it takes? And what I'm asking for in this worthy goal is like, I want it to be not just about you. I want it to contribute in some ways. So thrilling and important. But then you got the third idea of daunting. So daunting is, hey, is this going to help you grow? Is this going to help you learn? Is this going to help you find the next best version of you? Because at the heart of this book, we unlock our greatness by working on the hard things. It's not we unlock our greatness by winning a trophy. It's like it's when you start working on something that really matters, you see people stretching and learning and growing. And my bet, Dory, is, when you think of the courses that you teach, like helping people become thought leaders and helping them write, what you're seeing is people unlocking their greatness by working on the hard things. They're on the edge of their comfort and competence and their sense of their self. And you actually see them evolve and grow into a sense of, what, I can be a thought leader, and I can be an influencer, I can be a writer by doing the work.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Michael. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's helpful for a lot of folks. We want to say hi to some of the fantastic
Ooh,
folks joining us. Brandy's here from Spokane, Kristen from Dallas. We've got Gavin in Berlin, DT from Rochester, Sheba's here from Zambia, Tomas from
yeah.
Maryland, Katja from Germany. We're
Oh
so
man,
glad
this
to
is
have all of you.
fantastic. Oh, and
Yeah.
Helen from Istanbul. Istanbul. I mean, what a great city Istanbul is. The rice pudding in Istanbul. I mean, of course, there's amazing buildings, but the rice pudding, you need to go just for the rice pudding.
Well, absolutely. And if you are enjoying this conversation, we've been talking with Michael Bungay Stanier. He is the author of the new book, How to Begin. You can check it out at howtobegin.com. And if you want to make sure you never miss one of our episodes on Better, just go to dorieclark.com. You can sign up, get a free self assessment, join the mailing list. You'll get reminders about this. If you're liking this conversation, please hit the share button and the like button so that your friends on
Yes, please.
social media can benefit as well from it. And a great question, Michael, came in from Taylor.
Mm.
Taylor wants to know, and I'd love to hear your thoughts too, is finding your mission more important than finding your passion? Break that down for us. What do you think?
Yeah. It's a interesting question. There's lots of conversation around, is it mission, is it passion, is it worthy goal? Look, I think it's really helpful to have some sense of mission. It can be a kind of a bit of a North Star. Like, the way I have articulated a mission in the past for me is like I want to infect 1 billion people with the possibility virus. Now that mission was a lot better before there was a pandemic for 2.5 years. So forget the awkwardness of the infection metaphor. But that for a long time helped me figure out where I put my time and where I put my attention and how I figured out my worthy goals. The way I talk about it now is I want to help people be a force for change. And that isn't a project in and of itself. It's just a general direction. But now I can weigh up my choices to go, okay, of all the things I could do, and I'm now old enough that I know a bunch of things and I can do a bunch of things. What's the best way for me to help people be a force for change? And it kind of helps me shape and decide where I want to put my time and attention. Passion is an interesting thing to wrestle with. I'm sure there are some people out there who have gone, look, this is my passion, and then they put their time and attention into it and they built a lifestyle or a business or something from it. That's not how it's worked for me. I've not found it easy to articulate what my passion is. And in fact, what I found is by doing the work, I become passionate about it. Like if you told me 20 years ago that I was going to build a multi-million dollar business around coaching and the skills of coaching, I'd have been pretty skeptical. So I'm like, I'm not sure I'm that interested in that. But it turns out that as I kind of found my way into the work and I did the work, what kind of lit me up became obvious by doing the work. And that's what I get really excited about, which is it's in having the courage to do the work that's on the edge. You actually start learning about who you are and what your passions might be and what the best version of yourself might be.
That's great. I mean, I think it's really true. These things are very often emergent properties, and people get so tied up waiting for the perfect thing, waiting for the idea to emerge fully formed, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. And we learn by doing. So,
Yeah.
right on.
The other tricky thing with passion, Dory, is sometimes it's great just to keep your passion as a passion and to kind of just to enjoy it for its own sake rather than what sometimes happens and what I would be guilty of for sure is like, all right, how do I operationalize this? How do I scale this? How do I think about turning this into a business? How do I systematize some of this? And even saying those words, I can just feel the passion draining from me around how I'm thinking about that. So some things are worth protecting for the joy of the thing itself.
I think that's such a good point. In my new book, The Long Game, I actually talk about a concept called optimize for interesting.
Right.
That we don't necessarily have to
Brilliant.
figure out the passion, but just
Right.
is something interesting? Is it interesting enough to keep going? So I love that. Now,
Sorry,
Prashant. Oh
say
yeah.
more about optimize for interesting because I've heard you talk about it, but I bet some of the people here haven't. What does
Oh
that mean? Because it's such a good phrase, but give me an example of optimizing for interesting.
yeah. Well, that's very kind. Thank you. Well, I think very similar to what you're talking about, Michael. For so many people, they assume because this is how the cultural conversation goes that oh, I have to find my passion, I have to
Mm.
identify it, and there is oftentimes what I call passion shaming.
Yeah,
If people don't have a passion or they don't know what their passion is, they're like, oh
maybe.
God, what's wrong with me?
Yeah,
And
exactly. I've got a
yeah.
small stony heart. I'm not even really human. Yeah, because I'm not really passionate about anything. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. And so, I think that's such a terrible position for people to be in. And of course, if you just, sort of sit in your room by
Yeah,
yourself, that is not how you're going to find your passion, if in fact one is going to manifest at all.
yeah,
You really do learn by doing. And so optimize for interesting for me, I feel like one of the secrets of life, oftentimes is just lower the bar.
yeah. Yeah.
So instead of like, what is my passion? Like, oh, what is my destiny in life? It's like, okay, is something interesting to you? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, I think we can probably all agree that pursuing a career, pursuing a job that is not interesting to you would be
Right.
bad. I mean, you don't want to go into work and be like, oh my God, I want to kill myself. It's horrible. You want it, it doesn't necessarily have to be the soulmate of your life, but is it at least interesting? Is it something like, yeah, that's kind of cool. I'd like
Yeah.
to learn more about that. As long as you have that, just keep riding that horse until you get more clarity. If at a certain point it becomes not interesting, then fine, look for ways to pivot. But oftentimes, as you said, things get more interesting the better you get at them.
I years ago, in the context of organizational change, because I spent some years in that space, I heard some senior leader kind of say, "Look, let me tell you what change is really like. It's not this kind of magical kind of evolution. It's the experience is you set a goal, you run like hell towards the goal, you get as far as you can roughly in that direction, and then at a certain point you stop and you look around and go, well, now where am I, and what have I learned, and what's become clear and what's not become clear, and then you set the next goal and you have another sprint." And we think, because it so often looks like this, that this process of growth is this clear path that's evolving, but honestly most of that stuff only makes sense in hindsight. You're like, oh, this is how I got here. That saying, inspiration is when your past suddenly makes sense. You're like, oh, that's why I learned that and didn't learn that and failed at this and succeeded at that. And I think optimized for interesting, I love that phrase. It kind of captures this idea of run towards something interesting. And then when you get there, stop and surface and go, "Oh, okay, now what? What am I learning? What am I seeing? Who am I now? Now, what's the next best thing to run towards?"
Yeah, thank you. That's great. We want to just greet some of the folks who are tuning in to join us.
Right,
If
what
you're
a lovely
liking
crowd.
this, yeah, this conversation with Michael Bungay Stanier, hit the like and share button so your friends can benefit. But Shivashri is here from New Delhi, Javad from Iran, Jackie from Yorkshire. We have Mihai from Quebec. We have Holly from California. Rachel is tuning in from London. Lesia from Vienna. We've got Peterborough, New Hampshire in the house.
Right.
We've got Andrew from Liverpool, Nora from Istanbul. So many great friends.
This is great.
Uh,
And I'm
we're
just going to say, having talked about the quality of the rice pudding in Istanbul, knowing that somebody from Yorkshire here is, I just found a vegan recipe for Yorkshire pudding, changed my life. So another great food. So look, I saw somebody from Italy as well. I mean, I like to eat. You can tell this. So I'm just celebrating all the wonderful countries that are here, and it's just making my mouth water in anticipation.
You have very ecumenical tastes, Michael. I love that about you. So
Uh,
a great question came in from Prashant, who I think is probably on the page that a lot of
yeah.
us are. How can we stay kind to ourselves when these goals fail
That
to
is
take
such a
off?
good question, because so often we abandon it because we beat ourselves up because we are so hard on ourselves. So I'm going to say a few things around this. The first is a simple, powerful technique that I stole from a guy called Ben Zander and his wife, Roz Zander. They wrote a book 25 years ago called The Art of Possibility. And here's what they do. When things go wrong, when things go off the rails, and that always happens, you throw your hands in the air and you say, how fascinating. And what I love about that is, first of all, it shifts your body. It shifts your physiological state. Because often when things are going wrong, we're going to slump and we're in the, what's the point and who am I? And it's a disaster. But that just makes you immediately change your body. Your chemicals are different in your body. And the phrase, how fascinating, actually makes you go, well, isn't that interesting? And I'm sure this won't last. And what can I learn from this? So it creates a lightness to all of this. Here's the second thing that I would say, which is perhaps the deeper point. It's not if it's going to go wrong. It will totally go wrong. It is the very nature of taking on a goal. This is a goal that is thrilling. It's like it lights you up. It's like scary, exciting for you. It's important, like it means something to you, and it's daunting. You don't know how to do it. You know how to start it, but you don't know how to get to the end of it. It is impossible for there not to be some stumbles, there not to be some kind of fumbling forward. So part of that is just going, this is just part of the process. And at MBS.works, which is my small little company, Ainsley and I, we always talk, if we're not going how fascinating, we're saying it's not failure, it's feedback. So we're going, so what do we learn from this? What do we notice from this? the way I frame doing this work is actually run experiments. Just think of what you're doing as you move to your worthy goal as a series of experiments. Because the joy of an experiment is whether it works or whether it doesn't work, it's been a success. Because what an experiment does is it gives you data about what's likely to work next.
You get
And
data no matter what.
yeah, no matter what. So you're like, oh, that's brilliant. My experiment failed. That tells me a lot. Oh, brilliant. My experiment worked. That tells me a lot. And so to the point of the question is make it an experiment. So you're building an expectation of struggle and failure into it a little bit. And then to your very point, which is like, don't beat yourself up around this. Don't be cruel. Be kind, but make sure that you learn.
Yeah, that's so interesting, Michael. And
And can I pick up a question that's come from Annette that's
oh,
just popped in right
sure.
at the bottom there? She's like, do you suggest a community or a partnering angle to pursue a thrilling, important, and daunting? I'm like, Annette, you are spot on with that. It is really hard to do a worthy goal by yourself. I'm going to say next to impossible. Don't travel alone. Put the band together is what I call it in the book. Put the band together. And in the book, I talk about actually 4 different archetypal roles that you can think about where you might draw resource and support from. And this comes from Native wisdom, North American Native wisdom, Indigenous wisdom. And it's called calling in the directions. And the 4 different archetypes that you might think about are the warrior, somebody with a fierceness, somebody who got boundaries, somebody who will take no BS, somebody who will draw the line, somebody who like give you some backbone when you need backbone. There's the lover or the healer, somebody who will provide comfort and nourishment and an okay to be a mess with. Somebody who's a teacher or a magician, so a place to go for learning and wisdom and guidance. And then a visionary or a ruler, somebody who actually kind of keeps your eye on the horizon and on ambition and almost has a ruthlessness in terms of what it takes to pursue this. And my bet is as you think of those 4 archetypes, you know that you're strong in some of those and you're less strong in some of those. Like I'm good at visionary. I'm pretty hopeless at warrior. Honestly, I am a bit of a wimp. Now I need to bring people around me who can fortify me. I'm also not that good at that kind of the lover healer thing. I beat myself up a little bit. So I need people to help me with that as well. So it's such a good question. Don't travel alone. Whether that's getting a coach, whether that's setting up your own mastermind group, whether it's actually a team of people you hire in, but be smart about that.
Yeah, that's great, Michael. I'm certainly a believer in that as well, about having a community around you and the importance
You're a
of that.
legend of that. We all
Uh,
aspire to be the Dorie Clark of community building, because if you can be half as good as Dorie is in terms of bringing people together and finding connections, you're in a very good place.
well, you're very kind. And in fact, Annette, who asked the question, is a member of my recognized expert community, which has been just so transformative for me, and I think a lot of other folks. So thank you for that, Annette, and for that great question. Speaking of experiments, Michael, we were talking beforehand. You actually are doing an experiment right now with a bunch of colleagues that have
Yeah,
books that are coming out that came out. Your book literally just came out. It came out on Tuesday, so we're
that's
getting you
right.
hot off the presses here. But you have other colleagues that have
I
books
do.
that came out the same day, and you're doing a project with them. Can you tell us about this experiment?
Brilliant. Nice segue. So let me give you some names. Some of these names you'll know, some of them you won't. First of all, Apollo Ono. If you're an American, you almost certainly know this guy. He is the most decorated Winter Olympian. He's won tons of medals for being a speed skater. There's Pame Basse. She's the chief learning officer of Kraft Heinz. I mean, can you imagine trying to get hundreds of thousands of people to get smarter in organization? And then Whitney Johnson, who is another huge LinkedIn influencer and a brilliant writer of business
And
books.
Whitney's going to be an upcoming guest on this show as
That's
well.
perfect. So here's the deal. If you go to Begin, Grow, Pivot, and Learn, we are putting on a conference in a week's time, about 1 o'clock on January the 20th. And entry to the ticket is simply buying one of our books. Whitney and I both had books that came out on Tuesday. Pame's book came out a little earlier on. Apollo's is coming out a little later on. But just one of those books will give you access to a 90-minute show where we do some teaching and we do some interacting and we do some kind of explaining of some of the key concepts in our book. And of course, we would love to have you there. All the registration details are at that URL that's up on the screen, begingrowpivotlearn.com.
Awesome, Michael. That sounds great. Thank you. And a question came in, Michael, that I think is really interesting from Vashmi Jahan, and she wants to know: can you talk a little bit? What are the secrets to keeping the passion alive? We have all this passion when we begin. How
Yeah.
do we keep it up? Things get hard. Things get kind of
Sure.
draggy. So what do we do?
Yeah, that's a powerful insight. Here's how I think about it is I keep trying to have lots of small starts. Rather than having one really big project, I'm like, how do I keep starting and keep resetting so I have new beginnings all the time? So within MBS.works, we work on basically on a 6 week cycle. So Ainsley and I sit down at the start of a chapter, as we call it, and we set out what we're trying to achieve in the next 6 weeks, working hard. And we try not to overcommit, but we both tend to try and think we can do more than we can in 6 weeks, and we're learning, we're getting better at that. And then we work really hard for 6 weeks on the thing. And then at the end of the 6 weeks, we take a week or two off to reset and kind of tidy up all the other stuff we've been ignoring. And then we have another beginning where we're like, what's the best thing for us to work on right now? So I think part of it is building in these little resets. But also, I think the other secret is if you've done the work up front to draft and redraft and really make sure that your worthy goal is thrilling and important and daunting, it's just a better chance for that flame to stay alive when you're a bit further down the path, when you could get a bit bored with it, when it gets hard. Thrilling and important speaks to internal and external motivation, and daunting speaks to that commitment to growth.
Yeah, really good points. Thank you. We're here with Michael Bungay Stanier. He's the author of the new book. It just came out on Tuesday. It's called How to Begin. You can check it out at howtobegin.com. And Michael, a really interesting question came in from our pal in Iran, Javad, and he wants to know, how can we balance commitment to goals with flexibility? I mean, both of
Mm.
these are virtues.
Yeah.
How do we make sure that we're holding them in the right tension?
Yeah. That's an interesting question. I mean, the, the commitment is a big word, and flexibility is a big word as well. So I think what's interesting is to be asking yourself, you know, are you more likely to be opting out of a worthy goal too soon, or are you more likely to be opting out of a worthy goal too late? Because both are kind of errors. There's sometimes you're like, I should have given that up some time ago. Other times you're like, I know I kind of chickened out a little too early around that. And to get the timing right on that is a little bit like trying to buy low and sell high in the market. It's impossible to guess exactly when it's right. But what I would ask is, if you had a bias, do you think your bias is towards opting out too soon? Or do you think your bias is to kind of sticking with something too long? And my guess from many of us is that we opt out too soon. It gets hard, and we're like, okay, I'm going to give this up. But part of the power of that 6 week cycle that I was talking about a little bit before is that it means that when you look to the 6 week that's ahead of you, you think to yourself, is this a 6 weeks with space? Is this a 6 weeks with crisis and a bunch of stuff on? I mean, like Dorie's just moved to Miami. So if we were talking about, well, what working on your worthy goal, what progress do you think you're going to make in the next 6 weeks? Dorie's like, honestly, progress is unpacking some of my boxes, like meeting some good friends here in Miami and just learning how to settle down. I'm gonna write at most 2 pages of my next book. But then 6 weeks after that, when I go, Dorie, what are you up to in the next 6 weeks? She's like, I'm settled. My house is decorated. I found the cats. The cats are out and they're hanging out and they're enjoying Miami now.
6 weeks later, we found them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. My intention is to write 100 pages of my book. So you adapt to the context that you're in.
Yeah, that's so great, Michael. I really agree with that, and echo a lot of those themes in the long game as well. My what I have seen so often with the folks that I work with is that what we tend to be most afraid of is that we're going to be persisting too long in a goal that's fruitless. Like
Right.
that's the thing that everybody's worried about.
Yeah.
But actually, it's the opposite mistake, that they give up too soon on
Yeah.
something that could have worked.
Have you
So,
heard
love that
of
insight.
the Finland bus station? Have you heard that
No,
metaphor?
no. Tell me.
This is a nice way of thinking about this. So I'm not sure of the origin of this. It's not my idea. It's somebody else's. But The story is roughly this. When you're in Helsinki, the capital of Finland, and you want to catch a bus, there's like 30 different bus routes. But for the first 5 miles, the 30 routes just follow one of 3 different routes out of the city. And if you're on the bus, you can be like, this is the same route that everybody else is taking. Why am I on this bus? I don't know. And it's only after you're 5 miles into the journey that actually things start branching out and you lose travelers and you find your own specific destination. And if you get off the bus too soon, you've missed out on the interesting things starting to unfold. And, I think we're just violently agreeing with each other here, Dorie, where we're like, you know what? If you're not sure, it's probably stick with it a little bit longer, because on balance, that's the mistake we make too often, is we give up because we're not seeing it yet.
Yes, that's exactly right, Michael. Thank you. And we have an important news update from Adnan, who wants to let us know that the rice pudding that you're talking about is called sutlak. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong.
Wow.
Sorry,
I can't pronounce
Adnan.
it either, but I know I once ran a coach training course in Istanbul, and at the end of the course, they made me read out everybody's name to get their certificate. And I just got everybody's name completely wrong because the pronunciation of the Turkish language isn't what an English speaker thinks it is. But did they rescue me? No. They made me mispronounce 35 people's names, and it was a long ceremony. Anyway, but thank you, Adnan. That's perfect.
That's right. Well, we can Google it. We can look it all up, and I'll say that actually one of the professional highlights of my career is my great Turkish friend Ayşe Bursel, who I have had the pleasure of knowing and working with. I was able to convince Ayşe, whose name is spelled Ayse, to put her name phonetically in all of her email signatures and her LinkedIn profile, so that she says, like, it's changed my life, because now all the English speakers know how to pronounce her name and they're not scared.
We are friends as well, and I've seen her make that change. I didn't know what the cause of it was. And Dorie Clark, your influence is everywhere. Is there anything you haven't touched?
Just trying to change lives all over the planet, starting in Turkey, apparently. That is great. Well, Michael Bungay Stanier, we're so happy to have you here. Michael is, of course, the author of the new book. Go out and get it. It's called How to Begin, and you can check it out at howtobegin.com. Thank you, Michael. Thank you to everybody who has been joining us this week. We're so glad to have you on our weekly interview show for Newsweek, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. Michael Bungay Stanier, thank you.
Dorie Clark, thank you.